Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Metabolism and Menopause podcast. My name is Stephanie, and I am your host and CEO of Vitality OET. We are a women's nutrition, health, and fitness company that focuses predominantly on women's hormones, particularly as we start going through perimenopause and onwards. We know that so many things change in this time of your life, including hot flashes, night sweats, irritability, brain fog, and of course, weight gain around the middle that seems to have come out of absolutely nowhere, despite you not changing anything. So you go back to your eating less calories, cutting your carbs, doing a ton of cardio, but nothing seems to work and you just end up feeling worse. But we know now that your body is inherently different than what it was prior to these hormonal changes. So our mission here at Vitality is to help you learn what happens to your body during this time in your life, help you reach your health and fitness goals once and for all, live a life full of vitality, and finally feel in control again. So today is very fitting with the intro. I'm talking about how past things of cutting calories and all that kind of stuff just isn't working anymore. I have the wonderful coach Kirianna here on the podcast. She hasn't been on since like episode 3 or 4 or something. And today we are going to be talking about calories in, calories out, because that's how you lose fat, right? Like that's how we've always been told, eat less, move more. But we know that that just doesn't seem to be working for you anymore. So we're going to delve into what that actually means. So here's a question for you. If you are trying to eat less and exercise more and trying to lose fat, but somehow now you're in perimenopause and menopause, body isn't working the way you expected anymore, you're restricting your foods, but you're not seeing any progress, or the scale's actually going up and you're feeling worse, you're not feeling in control, you're feeling desperate, the holiday season is among us, we are already stressed out with everything else going on, and this is just that extra little cherry on top that just stresses you out. And of course, you're trying to do that crazy calories in, calories out. But we really want you to understand how your body works, how the whole calories in, calories out works. Because yes, you have to eat less calories and have your body burning more calories than you're eating in order to lose weight. But if that isn't working, there's obviously something else going on. So we are going to teach you about how all this actually functions so you can lose that stubborn belly fat once and for all and really get into it. So on the past episode, I believe it was episode 38, I went over a little bit of metabolism stuff, but we're just going to give you guys a brief overview of all that stuff right now too. So if you haven't listened to that episode, you understand a bit more, but if you want more details on that, you can go back to that episode. So Kirianna, I'll let you take it away with what metabolism is, what is calories, give us a nice big overview.
So first of all, you're right. What is metabolism? What is calories? Understanding this is really important. So we're going to take a little bit of a step back here just to ensure that we can all understand things moving forward for this podcast episode and just have a lot of clarity. So our metabolism, first and foremost, is how our body runs and utilizes energy. We talk about metabolism all the time on the podcast, of course, so we're not going to dwell on here long. You can head back to episode 38, I think it is, Steph. It talks a little bit more about what metabolism is. So for the concept of the podcast episode here and understanding, when we have a fast metabolism, we're referring to a body that runs well or burns energy really quickly. So we want to think of it like a diesel truck who's like a gas guzzling machine. When we have a slow metabolism, we're referring to a body that doesn't necessarily run well and doesn't burn energy very quickly. So you kind of think of it like a hybrid car. So in this situation with our bodies, a hybrid car isn't good. We want our metabolism to be a gas guzzling diesel truck because the faster it is, the more that we can achieve fat loss or have, the energy to do things because we're actually utilizing the fuel and we're burning off our fuel. So let's quickly understand now what calories are so that we're all on the same page there too. Calories are considered a unit of energy, and we need energy for our bodies to function properly. The foods we eat in the form of carbs, fats, and proteins all make up the total calories we consume or take in a day. You can kind of think of carbs, fats, and proteins the same way we think of building a house. we need different components to create the final structure. So we're going to need wood, we're going to need drywall, we're going to need brick sometimes, right? And that's all going to make up our final structure of a house. And carbs, fats, and proteins are kind of the same way. They are the building blocks that we have that make up our food. And they are the only things in our diets that provide energy in the form of calories for our body to utilize. So, really fun fact that I just found out actually a couple of years ago is that caffeine, because we don't think of it this way, but caffeine does not actually give us energy. It just prevents us from feeling so tired. So, like, caffeine's not going to give us energy. It just cuts off the feeling of tiredness that we have. Whereas carbs, fats, and proteins will actually give us energy and will give us calories to, for our bodies to function properly. So, Steph, let's talk now about like this whole calories in, calories out concept.
Yeah, so calories in and calories out is just a term that we use to describe something that we call energy balance, or like homeostasis is what our body likes to be. It's just the balance between the energy that we take in or we consume and absorb versus the energy that we burn or expend. So for instance, if we are going to be burning more energy than we are consuming, this is called a calorie deficit. For most people, this is where fat loss is going to happen. For most people, remember that. Put that in a little nugget in the back of your brain. If we are taking in more energy than we are burning, that is called a calorie surplus. For most people, this is going to result in fat gain. For most people. So remember, just put that little nugget in the back of your brain. These are just generalized concepts. If we burn off the same amount of energy as we take in, that's what we like to call calorie maintenance. And this is where our metabolism is always trying to be. For most people, this is where our body ends up staying the same. We plateau. There's no gaining. There's no losing. We just stay exactly where we are. And that's just like the basic, very, very simple way that works. However, bodies are a lot more complex than that. So now that you really understand metabolism, and if you don't really feel like you got it yet, head back to that past episode and you understand, okay, eat more than you burn, you're going to gain weight, yada, 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 that kind of stuff. When it comes down to it, at face value, that fat loss process should seem pretty simple, right? Like having less energy in and more energy out, aka calorie deficit, equals fat loss. Super simple. So the way that we would do this is eat less, move more, like when you put your dog on a diet, or for example, mosquito, feed it less and boom, you see fat loss. However, we are not cats and dogs. This is not how that works for us. Things are a little bit more complicated, especially once we start talking about hormones and perimenopause and menopause. Things are different. While this whole concept of being in a calorie deficit for fat loss may seem simple to you, the actual components of it are far more complicated than you may think. So we're going to try and simplify this as much as we can to like really make this easy for you to digest. So we're not going to get like too crazy sciencey in here for you, but you also have to think about how we have stress and our hormones there, like cortisol, which I've talked about a bajillion times. I don't think I've ever done a single podcast without mentioning it. So this should not be a new concept for you. And if it is, just head back to some of the past ones. We have fluctuations in estrogen and progesterone that are thrown in the mix. We have a system that's far more complicated than just eat less, move more for fat loss. And again, you really have to think about this holiday season as well. This is where things get really crazy. We're traveling a lot. We're dealing with family stress. Holidays might not always be the most relaxing time for you. You're planning all these things and there's finances and purchasing presents and wrapping them and taking them if you're traveling. And, all those things just, it adds up very, very quickly. And that's going to contribute to things as well. And sometimes energy balance actually ends up working the opposite way that you may think, especially when we're looking at hormonal imbalances, chronic stress, and other factors of menopause that are going to come into play here.
And the problem is that there are components other than just the calories we eat and then burn from exercise that influences our metabolic rate and our ability to store fat, or the way that we store fat. In other words, there are so many unrecognized factors that go into creating this energy balance, or this balance of calories in, calories out in our body. And that's what we're here for. So we want to help you understand what aspects of your lifestyle actually help you increase your metabolism, and how we can influence that calories in, calories out. Because again, it's a lot more nuanced and layered than we think it is just at face value. So it goes far beyond how little you eat and how much you exercise, especially when it comes to feeling good and losing fat, especially in menopause. So the first thing that I want to touch on is evolution. Our bodies are incredibly adaptive. So as humans, we aren't just these static machines that work and suddenly don't work at certain times in our life. We are actually a constant network of feedback systems, of adjustments and regulations based on our environment that does not stop adjusting like ever. Your body is always responding to your environment. It's always adjusting. We do this because we always want to be as balanced as possible. So, Steph, you were talking about that calorie maintenance phase. Your body always wants to be there because it will expend the least amount of energy as possible when it's in maintenance because it doesn't have to work as hard to be there. This is called adaptation. So, it's trying to expend as little energy as possible all the time. And this is just a biological process from evolution, right? We adapt to our environment over time. This can also be used to explain, how our bodies can get in shape or get stronger at the gym over time as well. So for instance, a marathon runner who has been practicing running marathons and they've been running for a long time finds it really easy compared to someone who's never ran before. Like me, I don't run. That is because the body has to adjust to this cardiovascular training that it's put under over time. So people who run marathons burn significantly less calories in their miles of running than someone like maybe me who tried to run a marathon who doesn't run at all. And I try to run one. I'm going to burn way more calories and expend a lot more energy than that person who is adapted to it. So of course, you'll burn way more calories when you're not in good shape or not trained. And that's just because we are not adapted to that stimulus or to the environment that we've put our body under. Whereas a marathon runner has put their body in that environment for a long time, so their body has adapted to it. Same thing goes for metabolism. So while it might seem like an ideal place it wants to be, so your metabolism is adapted, right? Or there's a maintenance calories here in terms of the way the metabolism is running. Our environment or what we are doing will force it to adjust and adapt to meet you where you're at. So we could do all the calculations in the world and say, hey, this is how many calories you should be eating to be at maintenance and your body should be functioning really good here. But if you have, an environment that's not conducive to that, we have to remember that your body's adapted to the environment. It's not adapted to like the equation that we've calculated for you that your body should be at. So again, this means that our metabolism is constantly adapting to how we input and how we burn off those calories because it's trying its hardest to constantly match with what the other side of the equation is doing. So the other side of the calories in and the calories out, it's always trying to match each other. So Steph, can you explain why?
Yeah, totally. So part of it, first of all, how Kirianna was like, if you haven't ran a marathon, you will burn a lot of calories. That is not us telling you to go run a marathon just to try and burn a ton of calories.
No.
That is
Don't
a terrible idea. Do not do that. So that's just preface number one. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is this is why like the first diet you do or the first exercise program that you do, typically you see such huge results. It's because it's such a new and novel thing. But then every time you're repeating stuff, it gets harder and harder and harder to see results because your body learns to adapt to it. So this is why like having the right training program is so important. This is why learning to cycle your food intake is so important. I talked about this on the Simple Seasons of Menopause Fat Loss episode. I do not remember what episode it is, but head back to that one for details. But this is why the first time it works so well. This is why our body adapts and then it gets harder and harder and harder. And then we're going to talk about hormones and all that kind of stuff and how it really messes things up. So we'll touch on that after, but that's just two things I wanted to point out there. So back to why with all this stuff. So evolutionarily, our body does not realize that you're just trying to lose 5 pounds or like trying to look a little bit better in a bikini, or maybe that you went a little bit crazy at your Christmas office party and had a little more indulgence than usual. Your body is just constantly trying to keep you alive in an ever-changing and incredibly ever-stressful environment that we are in. And when we evolved into the species that we are today, we didn't need we needed more intricate skills to navigate a harsher environment. We didn't evolve with a grocery store on every corner. We used to have to travel far and scavenge and hunt for food in order to survive. Our hormone profile is still in a similar state, which is why we all love our high calorie, fatty, sugary foods, because that's the stuff that was helping us be able to store fat over the crazy winters, or if we had some crazy famine or an apocalypse or whatever else is going on. So now this is true for all people. However, as women, we are biologically designed to carry children regardless if you want them or not, or if you have had them or not, which makes our bodies significantly more sensitive to the environment than men. So this is why we have to be careful when we're doing different types of diets and things like that. We can't be as aggressive because our bodies are so much more sensitive than men's. So this is why women respond so much worse to stress compared to men. This is why fat loss can be so much more difficult. It's because our body detects stress as more of a factor of harm and risk when we're having offspring than men, because they don't have to grow a baby for 9 months. So this is why, like, maybe you and your husband went on the same challenge, or you did the same diet or same workout routine, and like he drops weight so fast, puts on muscle super quickly, and you're left feeling exhausted and like not really seeing results, and you're freaking starving and he's like thriving. This is why our bodies are not the same. Our bodies are so much more sensitive to stress. This is really, like, if you don't learn anything else, I want you guys to know that from this episode. Women's bodies are far more sensitive to stress. Men's bodies are more resilient to stress. They can handle more. And we also have to remember what controls the body the most is going to be our brain. The brain is constantly monitoring our energy balance all of the time. Think of it as like mission control. It sends and receives messages and signals from your gut, your muscles, your bloodstream, your fat cells, your hormones, other organs, the external stimulus, the temperature, everything to help us balance our appetite and energy in, and then our metabolism, energy out, or how many calories our body is going to burn based on all of that information. So now that we have a grasp on what metabolism and energy balance is, what factors actually make up each side of calories in and calories out, that's the next question. So I'll let Kirianna talk about the calories are out portion of the equation a bit. I touched a lot on this in episode 38. So again, you can head back there. But yeah, Kirianna, let's just start with the 4 main things that really determine the calories out part of the equation.
Okay, so the 4 main things that determine calories out would be your basal metabolic rate, or your BMR, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or what we like to call as an acronym of NEAT, your thermic effective foods, or TEF, and your exercise. So your BMR, or your basal metabolic rate, accounts for up to 60% of your calories burned in a day, which means it has the greatest impact on how many calories you burn. So your BMR is how many calories your body would burn all by itself to survive if you were just kind of like laying around all day and not doing anything else. So you were like at rest, but your body was functioning to keep you alive. So of course, with our BMR, we want our body to burn more calories at rest. And we can do this by increasing muscle mass. We can do this by, improving the way that we take care of ourselves, and reducing our stress as well. So muscles will burn more calories at rest, which is very important. Also remember that as we age, we inherently start to lose muscle if we are not working hard to retain it. Non-exercise activity thermogenesis can account for a very large percentage of your calories out as well. So for some people, it can account for a very small percentage, but for some people, it can account for a very large percentage. So like we usually say it can account for about 10 to 50% of your energy out in a day, or how much energy you're burning. Most people have desk jobs, so they might be at the lower end of this, but your non-exercise activity is what we consider things that are just activity or movement outside of exercise. And this is actually really important because it's a very overlooked aspect of your calorie burn, but it creates a lot of, calories at the end of the day, or a lot of energy expenditure at the end of the day without you really thinking about it. So for some people, it could be genetic, how much they move around. For some people, it's lifestyle. So of course, if you're a little bit younger, you're going to move around a little bit more. Like, have you ever watched kids? They get like 40,000 steps in a day doing like just the regular stuff they do. I am not going to get that many steps a day doing the regular stuff. I do that is for sure. If you have a desk job, that's going to influence your non-exercise activity because you're not going to be moving around as much. If you're not a fidgeter, like fidgeting or having the energy to get up and just like stand up and walk around and go to the fridge and come back, or like go up the stairs and down the stairs, like all of those things create this non-exercise activity thermogenesis that can make up for a very large portion of our calories out. Now, our thermic effect of food is actually really important too. And we don't talk about this a lot either. So this is the amount of calories that it takes to digest certain foods that you eat or certain macronutrients. So your carbs, your fats, and your proteins. So carbs and fat account for about 5 to 15% of the calories you consumed that are burned during digestion, because your body has to work to actually digest your food, and that takes energy and calories as well. Protein is the most thermogenic macronutrient. So it can account for up to, 20 to 35% of the calories consumed that we actually are burning during digestion, because it takes a lot more work to digest calories. This is also an example of if you eat a lot of meat, or like if you go to like a good barbecue place, you're probably going to get some meat sweats where your body actually like heats up and you get really sweaty and hot if you eat too much protein or too much meat all at once, because it takes a lot of calories for your body to digest that protein and to absorb that protein. Last one is exercise. So I'll quickly go over that. It accounts for the things that you do during your workouts. So actual exercise or intentional exercise. So going for a run, or even going for like a very fast walk, or doing your workouts, going to CrossFit, or doing your weightlifting, or whatever it is. Your exercise, people really overestimate what kind of impact direct exercise has on their calorie burn. To be completely honest with you, it's usually far less than we think, and it can account for maybe a total of 10% total calories, unless you're like an athlete training 6 hours a day, right? Which we're not. So people tend to overestimate what kind of an impact direct exercise has on their overall calorie burn. So you're doing a heavy leg day and your watch is telling you you're burning 1,000 calories in the workout. Probably not. It's probably closer to like 200 or 300, right? So we really overestimate the impact that exercise has on overall calorie burn. And then we also underestimate the impact that our non-exercise activity, our thermic effective food, so how we're digesting our food, and even our basal metabolic rate has on overall calorie burn. So in other words, we focus way too much on trying to burn calories in a workout and not enough on actually the other things that are going to influence 90% of our calories out, which is eating the right foods, fixing our baseline metabolism by building muscle and recovering appropriately, and getting in consistent daily activity like steps and movement versus actually that, half-hour workout that you're going to do. So now it's important to remember that all 4 of these components of energy out have layers of influence outside of us as well. Or they're also influenced by things in our environment on a little bit more of a granular level. So there's always going to be layers to these very, big concepts. For example, exercise is influenced by how long you exercise, how intense your exercise is, and the environment of the exercise. But it's also influenced by how much stress it can elicit on the body and how much stress that body can recover from. So if your body's already stressed and you're creating a lot of stress with your workouts, chances are it's probably not going to have that positive effect that you think, because your body's going to be more, inherently in survival mode, just trying to recover from this as opposed to like actually thriving. Your thermic effect of food is influenced by the ingredients in the food, the processing of the food, how difficult your food is to digest, how much protein is in your food, and even the caffeine content, which can speed up the rate at which it goes through your digestive system, which can affect the nutrient absorption as well. Your non-exercise activity is influenced, of course, by your health status, how much you move. So if you're not feeling well or you're feeling like crap, your non-exercise activity is going to be like really, really, really downregulated. If you're sick, it's not. If you're bedridden, you're not going to be getting a lot of non-exercise activity. Your hormone balance will also affect your non-exercise activity, because if you're hypothyroidism, for example, your non-exercise activity will just automatically be lower because your body's not functioning as quickly or as efficiently. Your job, your hobbies, so if you play a sport after work versus if you read a book after work, that's probably going to affect your non-exercise activity. Current nutrition intake, so the more you eat, the more you'll move. Your age, Again, kids get 40,000 steps a day. 65-year-old adults don't probably get 60,000 or 40,000 steps a day like kids because we just don't move around a lot as we get older. And even genetics. So some people just naturally genetically move around a lot more than other people. So that's also something to consider. And the last one is that your BMR can actually be influenced by a lot of things too. So your body size will determine your metabolic rate at a baseline level, your health status, your hormone profile. So if you have imbalanced hormones, especially with like stress hormones, or you're not able to regulate insulin properly, that can affect some things. Your history of dieting. So if you yo-yo diet, that's probably going to cause a lower BMR. Your sleep quality will affect your basal metabolic rate, your age, your gender. So men versus women, obviously, you're going to be a little bit different. Your muscle mass is going to play a huge role in how fast your basal metabolic rate is. Your thyroid function, of course, because that's really important for metabolism. And of course, your current caloric intake can also determine to a small extent where your BMR is going. So let's quickly get deeper into this because we see this all the time with a lot of clients that come to us for help. A long history of dieting is going to most likely downregulate your overall metabolism as it attempts to adjust to long periods of severe restriction. But eating extremely low calorie for a long period of time is also going to inherently slow down all of your body's processes without you even realizing as it attempts to adapt to not enough energy to function properly.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about here what influences your calorie burn and calorie input a little bit here as well. But like Kirianna said, like the type of exercise and the environment can really dictate like how many calories your body's burning. We were in Mexico for our honeymoon. I wanted to work out a couple times. I am not created to work out in the humidity. Oh my goodness, you guys. I like lifted like maybe 50% of what I usually do. I also didn't have enough carb before my workout, so that was really challenging. But like I have never felt so crappy in a workout in my entire life. I was like shaking. My heart rate was so high. I like felt like I couldn't breathe. I felt nauseous. Like it was crazy. And I literally just did 6 sets. That was it. Like I did 2 exercises, 3 sets of each. I thought I was going to die. And I can guarantee you that I probably burnt more calories in that workout than I have done in like such a long time. Because just the environment, my body was like, what the heck are you trying to do here, girl? Like, this is not okay. So all those things do matter. So back to where we were. So you may be wondering like what actually influences calories in, because the simple assumption is that it's just the food you eat, right? That's how you get calories in, is through eating food and drinking stuff. And while yes, that is true, it goes so much more deeper than that. So our actual appetite is one of those things. Some people are going to naturally be far more hungry than other people, or be more food driven, or think about food more, which is going to influence their eating habits. Appetite can also be influenced by our hormonal balance, like ghrelin and leptin, our hunger hormones, or insulin, which controls blood sugar. So if our blood sugar drops, we start having cravings. Our stress levels are going to influence our appetite. Like if you're in a high stress state, either you're one or the other. You're like, I am reaching for food because I need comfort and I'm stressed out. Or 2, you just skip meals. And a lot of people do the skipping meal thing. And then once they finally relax and their stress hormones come down, they are literally reaching for anything they can get their hands on. And then we also have to think about our emotional state. When we're happy, when we're sad, it can influence how much we eat and how we eat and what we're eating. Like, for example, I had a really bad day like earlier this week. I was just like tired and frustrated and just felt like everything was going wrong. And I drove by Dairy Queen. So for those of you who don't know Dairy Queen, because you're not Canadian, they have blizzards. And that's kind of like a McFlurry from McDonald's. And like, I love me a Turtles Blizzard. So good. And I was like, I'm in a bad mood. I'm going to get one. And I was like, no, you're fine. Like, that's not going to solve your problems. Like, eating this Blizzard isn't going to naturally take all this stress away. So we're just not going to do that. Which like, honestly, for me is like a pretty big deal because I really like Dairy Queen a lot. So other things that we need to consider too are the amount of calories that we actually absorb, which is going to be influenced by a ton of different things like the state of our digestion and our gut health. So that's going to influence how many calories we can absorb, the nutrients that we can absorb, the vitamins that we can absorb, our health status. Sicker people don't typically absorb as many nutrients. This is why you can be taking supplements and still see levels be low. This is part of that. Or even the choice of food itself. Protein, like we talked about, is going to burn more calories in the digestive process. Or like really high fiber foods are also harder to digest. So that can burn more calories. Or we have a harder time actually like absorbing nutrients from some really high fiber foods, like, or there's like corn or seeds, while some people may not be able to absorb as much from highly inflammatory foods in their body. So the type of food and like based on your gut health makes a really big difference on the calories that are absorbed as well. Then we have our psychological factors. So this is also going to influence our energy input and output, like we talked about it. If you're like sad and depressed and exhausted, like it's going to be really hard to like want to make yourself go for a walk or to get up off the couch. But it can also, like if we're in a poor like state of mind where we're extremely like feeling a lot of stress, our mindset isn't super great, we're again like depressed, our sense of control may feel like we just don't have it anymore, we're feeling like desperate or hopeless, our self-esteem is low, or our self-confidence even. All those things can really determine the amount of food that we eat, the types of food that we eat, how much control we feel when we're actually like eating our foods, how we have control over energy intake and food choices. Social factors like friends around you and family, like they play a huge influence on your food intake. And this is something I really struggled with some certain friends in particular. Like now the people that are in my life really understand that I don't really drink much. Like I think even when we were in Florida with the team, I think I had one actual alcoholic drink. The rest I just got like a fun little like juice, or, you know, I'm just sticking to water. Like I'm not a big alcohol drinker. But like I had people in my life before that would like encourage me to like want to stay out later and like have more drinks, or we always had to have an appetizer. And I just would be like, okay, like whatever. And then when I started making boundaries around like, okay, like this is important to me. I actually don't really like drinking alcohol. It makes me feel terrible. It bothers my gut health. It's not something I want to do anymore. And I ended up losing friends over that because it's just, they just like didn't understand, which was like really sad. But it's important to realize that like the environments that you're in and who are in them, and how they make you feel is going to make a lot of influence over the types of foods you eat. So it's not as simple as we think it is. And then think about like certain demographics about your environment, like single parents or one income, or people who are retired and are typically going to be making much different food choices than and have different appetites than people who are on a double income household, or perhaps work full time or go out to eat more because they can afford it. Like that's all going to be influencing the type of foods that you're eating and your caloric intake as well. And then you got to think about geography. So people don't really think about this stuff, but I don't think people who are in Northern Canada are going to be eating fresh fruits and veggies and salads on a daily basis versus someone who lives in California, or people who live in rural locations will be making drastically different choices than people who live in large urban areas. Like I used to live in a town of 1,000 people. A jug of milk is freaking expensive there. Like, so we didn't have like cheese and dairy and that much. Like we only got that when we went to the city like once a month, and we'd go on like our big superstore Costco haul and, you know, load up on all those things. And then once it was out, it was out. So because that kind of stuff makes a difference too. And that really ties us into like culture and socioeconomic status. It's not talked about much when we talk about the foods that we eat, but it absolutely plays a huge role. Certain cultures come with certain foods and certain celebrations and certain family traditions. Like whoever has had like an Italian grandmother knows that you have to eat multiple servings and they'll keep topping up your plate unless you like put your fork and knife on it and like a napkin, and like the food, like the plate is not empty. Otherwise they're going to keep loading you up. Like that's how it was in my household. Like we're a Latin family. Like you eat and you eat a lot. And like anytime you're hanging out, like there had to be dessert on the table, or you're coming over for a meal, or you're going for coffee and having a treat. Like I don't think I have ever hung out with any member of my family on my mom's side, because that's the Latin side, where we didn't have food available. Like that's just, it's not a thing. You don't do that. Like it's always like, oh, do you want this? Oh, do you want that? And it's like, yeah, I do. So those things do make a big difference. And then, of course, our socioeconomic status and our ethnicity has been shown to not only affect food choices, but food security as well. So the big takeaway in all of this is that there are so many factors that influence energy balance and many factors on both sides when it comes to calories in and calories out that are really going to influence one another. And it's not as black and white as people may think it be. It's just eat less, move more. It's not that simple. So now the big question that you're all here for, of course, is okay, cool, understand that stuff. But what about me, Steph? My hormones, I'm perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause. When do you talk about me? Okay, now we're going to talk about you.
Okay. So the first step is to, of course, know all the nuances and the layers of our calories in, calories out equation, which we now all know. So awesome. We're on the same page. Now we can start taking an objective look at some of these factors that might be playing a role in how our body is functioning right now. So typically, for us in our coaching program that we have, Steph, we see women coming into our coaching program struggling with 5 pretty major main symptoms or main struggles. First one is, of course, weight loss resistance. And sometimes for some people, it's uncontrollable weight gain. The second one would be low energy and like major fatigue. So they just don't feel like they have energy anymore, energy crashes, things like that. They have bad sleep, tossing and turning, waking up at 3 a.m. like clockwork every night, wide awake, unable to get back to sleep, does not feel rested in the morning. Fourth one would be bad digestion, like bloating, constipation. And then the fifth one would be uncontrollable hormonal symptoms like hot flashes, night sweats, brain fog, all of those really not fun menopausal side effects and symptoms. So, as coaches in our program, the first thing we have to do is determine what things are affecting either side of this energy balance equation. And this is why it is so important for us to meet a client's body where their body is at and not where their body wants to be. And why we do so many comprehensive assessments in the program when somebody comes in and joins the coaching, because it's really important that we gauge where the body is currently at, where the metabolism is at, what kind of nuance, what kind of layers actually make up that energy in and that energy out in order for us to actually start creating an environment that's going to improve their bodies over time and get them to their goals.
Yeah. So, for example, things that we do inventory in is we do a stress assessment, we do a hormonal symptom assessment, we do a metabolic assessment, we do a blood sugar one. We do 5 or 6 different ones depending on where you are at to really figure out, is cortisol and stress the big thing that's like needing to be addressed and like really messing up the calories in, calories out and your metabolism? Is it more hormonal? Is it more gut health? Like there are so many things that can really influence things. So really figuring out where is the equation going wrong so that we can figure out exactly how to get your metabolism back up so you can see fat loss. Because somewhere along the line, the calories in, calories out, something is not where it needs to be, which is why you are struggling so much. So here's an example of our energy being affected on both sides of the scale, calories in, calories out, and why it's so important to understand. So let's just say we have a client come in, they're complaining about all the things Kirianna talked about and just feeling terrible. They have a long history of yo-yo dieting or chronic dieting. They've done Optavia and keto and low calorie and Weight Watchers and faster way to weight loss and all these other things. And they're under a lot of stress with their full-time job, their kids' extracurriculars, not to mention they're in perimenopause, their joints are bugging them, they feel freaking exhausted, they're not sleeping, they have digestive issues, they feel like they're constantly go, 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 and like working out. So ultimately they come in and they are like, Steph, I just want to feel like me again, and I want to lose weight. But when we figure out where their calories are right now, as we get people to track where they are, we find out that she is only eating 1,500 calories a day and very little protein. So first and foremost, we can see right away that our energy output of this calories in, calories out, the burning is probably not as much as it should be. Having a long history of extreme diets means that our metabolism is definitely slowing down. It's trying to adapt to that extremely low calories again and again and again, and that just becomes its baseline. So not only that, but eating what is considered low calorie is now just going to cause that metabolic adaptation we talked about. Their body is slowing down just in order to survive, because it's like, we're not getting enough energy. We are just going to like chill. Like we're going to slow things down so like nothing bad happens here. So you could and this is a big could in quotation marks, theoretically put this client into a deficit by forcing them to double their exercise and take away some of their calories. So this is where the 25 or 1,200 calories diet hill is the one that many people will die on. I'm not even going to get into that because this is going to be a long podcast, but what is this going to achieve for that person if we double their exercise and drop their calories down to 1,200 or less? Probably not what you think will. First of all, more exercise is probably not possible for someone who has a busy full-time job and 2 kids to take care of, and they're being the taxi mom, and they're already exhausted, and reducing their energy intake by dropping their calories more is not going to help them with their metabolism. Their metabolism is going to keep slowing down, and we know metabolism is like 60% of your calories out. So if that keeps decreasing by like 100 calories, like that's a huge, huge, huge amount. So it's going to make them feel worse, not better. Their energy is going to be awful. Their sleep is going to be non-existent because you're stuck in fight or flight. So you're sleeping with one eye open, even though you don't want to be. Your mood is going to completely tank. Their hormonal imbalance symptoms will most likely get worse. And not to mention, you're just adding another layer of stress on top of an already stressed out body. Like when you put it out that way, you can tell that's not a good idea. And it's not going to benefit the person. And then not to mention that when a body is already in a restricted state and it's even more severely restricted, that body will subconsciously slow down your non-exercise activity like fidgeting, talking with your hands, normal movement, and it will release hormones that will make you think about food more often. So it'll actually increase your appetite. You won't feel as full as easily, and you're going to have far less control around it. And most likely, if you did this to that client, they're actually not going to lose any weight at all. In fact, they're going to feel worse and they'll probably see weight gain because your body is freaking out. Because when we eat less, our thermic effect of food goes down because we're not eating as much food. So we're burning less calories during the digestive process because we're not digesting as much food. That's also going to make us more tired. And this is going to affect our non-exercise activity, less fidgeting, less walking, and overall just being less active and energized without even noticing. This then is going to slow down our metabolism, which is going to severely affect our total calories out. Because if you think about it, let's say your basal metabolic rate naturally is 1,600. If you drop that down by like 25%, your calories out decreases substantially. So we want to make sure that that isn't happening for you. And then you're going to see weight loss resistance even though you're eating less. So this is why eat less, move more is not always applicable and why online calculators do not work because your online calculator didn't ask you all those questions. So this is why it's really important to understand what's happening to your body, make the changes that you need so that you can see successful changes.
So remembering too that not enough energy in general, as Steph said, will force your body to get more frugal and more cost effective with its energy. So it's just like if you were spending $200 a day and that was your budget, and all of a sudden somebody said, you actually can only spend $25 a day, like you're going to have to get forced to make some pretty extreme changes and cuts in your day in order to actually only be spending $25 versus the $200 that you've gotten used to, right? So this is much like a company also trying to downsize. So non-essential systems or systems that are, the most costly on energy or for a company on money will get shut down. And so that same thing happens in your body. Hormone production and communication is unfortunately very costly, and many hormone processes will slow down. Unfortunately, with women, sex hormones tend to be the ones that get sacrificed quite quickly because even though estrogen and progesterone are necessary for us to feel good, they're not necessarily for us to survive. They're there for technical reproduction. And even though they have a lot of positive benefits outside of reproduction, that's kind of what they're there for. And so unfortunately with women, we tend to as a survival mechanism or when there's a lot of stress, that's when our bodies will start to cut that hormone balance out. And they'll say, hey, we don't need to produce these hormones right now. We are not worried about reproducing. We're worried about surviving, right? And that's not what we want. So instead, we want to influence our energy balance in the opposite direction. of, this concept of eating less, moving more. We don't want to do that, but we still want to have the same result. So we want to help our clients feel better from the inside out. And so we can do this by progressively giving them more nutrients and more energy in the form of food, working on repairing the stress response so that the body is actually no longer in fight or flight. It's no longer needing to be frugal. We need to fix some digestion so that we can increase that nutrient absorption. We can improve sleep and recovery, which will help our muscle retention and then our basal metabolic rate. And then getting the body gaining some muscle from that is really important as well, which can help speed up our metabolism, give us more strength, give us more energy, and then therefore give us more ability to actually burn more energy in response to that. So guess what this will do? This will actually make the client feel better, which gives them more energy, a happier mindset, less focus on food, more control over their appetite and hormones, more vitality for life. And this will inherently increase their energy output, which is their calorie burn, and make them more energized to move around, more energized to work out. They're going to go to the gym feeling good and get their workout in and probably burn more calories there without the stress response. And it makes them more willing to get up and do something fun. Not only that, but we'll burn calories when we eat food. So we're going to increase that calorie burn as well. So this will create a body that can absorb nutrients better, we can build muscle better, and we can have more balanced hormones with less side effects, which will ultimately tip the scales to create a calorie deficit. But we're doing it the opposite way that you kind of think that it would be in your mind, because we're improving the calorie output from an internal perspective and increasing our calorie input to more further improve that calorie output. Just like we were talking about, you want to be a diesel truck. You want to be burning lots of fuel on a consistent basis. And that's what we want you to be. We don't want you to be a hybrid car. We want you to be burning all of that gas as much as you can.
So I'm going to touch a little bit here about like some specific hormone type stuff and different examples. So higher stress. We know that like eating less, moving more, feeling terrible, your body is under a lot of stress. When you feel terrible, that is your body trying to tell you something. You need help, and cutting calories and doing more exercise is just punishing it more. And it's likely going to result in you feeling way worse and actually gaining weight, which is the opposite thing of what you want. So high stress, we see cortisol go up. We know that when cortisol, that's our stress hormone, and during perimenopause and menopause, when estrogen and progesterone go down, we can't handle stress as well. And as women, we naturally are more sensitive to stress. And this is really amplified when we start seeing these hormone changes during perimenopause and menopause. So now it takes way less for your body to see this spike in cortisol. When that happens, it steals the precursor that we need to build progesterone. So that's going to lower our progesterone. It's going to result in muscle loss, which is going to result in your metabolism slowing down. That 60% out, that number decreases. And you're going to see fat gain without changing anything else, just from your stress increasing. And this can be from all the things we talked about. When we have that low progesterone, then we're going to see hormonal side effects. We're going to have a loss in vitality, a loss in energy. That means we're going to have less energy to do that non-exercise activity, less strength in workouts, which we're going to have a hard time building and maintaining muscle, which we know during perimenopause and menopause, when estrogen goes down, we have a harder time building and maintaining muscle. So that's going to result again in a slower metabolism. We're going to see a higher body fat percentage, which again is not why you're working out. And then we also see that when stress is high, we have lower thyroid function. And this already starts to happen. We have a much increased risk during perimenopause and menopause to develop hypothyroidism, because when stress is high, thyroid function slows down drastically and pretty quickly. This also happens when you cut your carbs. So if you want to save your thyroid, make sure you're having carbs. We did a whole podcast on this a long time ago. It's like episode 4 or 3. And what happens when thyroid function goes down is our thyroid is a thermostat that determines how many calories our body burns at rest. So it starts turning that dial towards the hybrid car instead of the diesel truck. And then again, you're going to have less energy. You're going to have lower activity levels. You are going to have your metabolism slow down. And all those things result in you feeling awful and seeing fat gain. Then if we have lower estrogen as we start going through perimenopause and menopause, we have that no stress buffer there. That's where that cortisol really goes up, which results in muscle loss and slowing metabolism and fat gain. And it's really important to note that people are afraid to eat carbs. And if we're not eating carbs, cortisol goes up. Cortisol will actually dump sugar into our bloodstream, So if you're afraid of blood sugars, by not eating carbs, you're going to see an increase in your blood sugar anyways, causing insulin resistance. And you're not getting any energy from that like you would from carbs or the digestive effect. So just eat your carbs to save your thyroid and actually improve your blood sugars. We did a whole podcast on that as well. Stress is going to cause hormonal imbalances. When your hormones are not in a good place, you are going to have less energy. You are going to have far more digestion issues, more bloating, more leaky gut, more food sensitivities. All of this leads to lower nutrient absorption from food, which leads to nutrient deficiencies. That's going to lead to a ton of inflammation. When inflammation goes up, cortisol goes up. You're going to have a slowing of metabolism, less energy, which leads to more fat gain, even worse digestion, and you feeling terrible. So you can see how hormones and just all of this in general play such a huge role in energy in and energy out, but it may not be the way that you directly think. They play such a huge role in energy balance, but it's not necessarily the cause of why you're imbalanced or why your metabolism seems slower. The most significant hormone changes in women occur during perimenopause or when their thyroid stops working properly. And unfortunately, that usually happens at the same time in a lot of women because you force yourself into hypothyroidism because of this high stress state from cutting your calories, cutting your carbs, and doing too much exercise. You're go, go, go all the time. You're never handling stress. And you're like, Steph, I'm fine. Like, I feel like I handle my stress pretty well. You might psychologically be telling yourself that. Your body is telling you something completely different. You cannot out-trick your physiology that way. It doesn't work. Restrictive dieting, doing the inconsistency of calories where you're really low for a long time and then you go really high, or you're having hormonal birth control that wasn't right for you, and doing the excessive HIIT and the cardio, all those things are seriously messing up your hormones, your cortisol levels, and making you go into perimenopause and menopause sooner, having more aggressive hormonal symptoms, messing up that balance of calories in, calories out, so that you cannot lose weight. These hormone changes are mainly causing weight gain because they're influencing that energy balance. So, for example, low progesterone doesn't cause weight loss resistance by itself, but it really influences the way your estrogen and testosterone are secreted, creating emotional changes, seeing fluid retention, self-confidence issues, gut problems, low energy, insulin resistance, subsequent thyroid issues, which all those will directly impact your energy levels and your activity throughout the day, making your metabolism slow down, having blood sugar issues, which results in cravings, and that leads to fat storage. So it's not like one thing causes the other. It's this cascading effect. So what you have to do is address the number one thing at the top that's causing all these things down the road. But that's where people get wrong, is that they try to do all these things at the bottom of plugging the holes of, oh, it's my blood sugar, so I must cut carbs. But you don't realize your blood sugars are out of control because of the stress and cause of cortisol. Like, that's where things are really going wrong. So even though we said that fat loss is simple, calories in, calories out, energy balance is not that simple. And anyone who says it is doing you a massive disservice, because I can guarantee you've tried calories in, calories out, or you're doing it right now and it's not working. And to think to keep doing this same thing is going to magically cause a change is madness. You're not going to start magically feeling better by doing this over and over and over again. And you're consistent with doing the wrong things. You're not consistent in doing the right things. If you spent as much time focusing on the consistency of de-stressing your lifestyle, working on your sleep, eating enough food, fixing your relationship with food, addressing digestion, doing all of those things, that if you focus on doing those things as consistently as you look for fad diets and Google these little pills and do all these things consistently that are wrong, you would be so far ahead. You would have been at your goal already. But we've been taught to do all these things and we're not taught how to sustain it, how it affects our body in the long run. And you should never be doing stuff if you don't understand how it personally affects you. Like, you can see that keto might work really well for some people, but does it work for you? How is it going to affect your thyroid, your hormones, your energy levels, your digestion? If people don't do like all the history stuff that you need and you just jump on this next thing, you can just be making things worse and worse and worse, digging yourself a deeper hole, a deeper hole, a deeper hole. The deeper that hole is, you still have to climb out of it. So it's going to take you twice as long to get out. So if you work consistently on the right stuff as much as you did on the wrong stuff, man, like there's nothing stopping you. It's just that we're too impatient and we spent so much time doing the wrong stuff. But for some reason, we think in 4 weeks of consistently doing the right stuff, that should counteract 20 years of consistently doing the wrong stuff. It doesn't work that way. It's going to take longer than you want, but I promise you, you will start feeling better so much quicker if you have your carbs, if you're eating enough food and doing this appropriately. And that is what we help you with. Like if you message us, like we will help you figure out your calories, where things are going wrong, how quickly to increase, where things need to be adjusted, what can help improve your sleep, all of those things. But you have to be consistent, and it's not going to be 4 weeks. It might not be 6 weeks. It might not be 8 weeks. We have women who've had to do this process for 7 months before being able to go into a fat loss phase. And that doesn't mean they didn't see results, because they did. They started feeling better, significantly so, having the energy, no more hormonal symptoms, sleeping better, working out, seeing their strength go up. But these quick fat loss things is such crap, you guys, and it's just ruining everything for you. And that calories in, calories out equation, like it doesn't work. It's so much more complicated than that. So Kirianna's going to touch a little bit on consistency, because this is a very big one as well, because I know I talked about a bit about being consistent on the right stuff, but we're going to talk about calories a little bit here as well.
Yeah. So a note on inconsistency, once again, just to reiterate, because we see this all the time. We do free consult calls all the time. We tell people, like women, what their calories should be, or like maybe we give them a roadmap to try to get them to where they need to be, or we just take an inventory of what's going on now, and we will be able to objectively tell them, hey, what can you improve on your own in order to get here? Our bodies don't like inconsistency, especially women's bodies. Remember, Steph was talking about evolution, right? We have to reproduce. We're very sensitive to our environments. If you're more likely to eat 800 calories one day and then 2,500 calories the next day, then you're actually more likely to gain fat than if you just consumed 1,800 calories consistently, which seems like a lot of calories for somebody that's trying to lose fat in diet, because we've been programmed through, diet culture that 1,800 calories is a lot of calories, but it's really not. Consistency is going to be the biggest tool in your toolbox that other people will not understand when it comes to fat loss. The more comfortable your body feels with its environment, the less likely it's going to hang on to unwanted fat stores. So, for example, if you're eating 800 calories, Monday to Wednesday, and then that 800 calories is just like not something you can handle anymore, and you cave and you go out for dinner and enjoy your dinner, and suddenly that one day is 2,500 calories, and then you feel guilty and you cause more stress on your body by, shaming yourself, and then you restrict calories again because you need to make up for that 2,500 calorie day. Your body is going to do this. It's going to say, hey, I actually don't know how much energy I'm getting tomorrow. I could be getting a 2,500 calorie day. I could be getting an 800 calorie day. But because I don't know what to expect, I'm going to down-regulate myself because it's causing me a lot of stress to try to be adjusting to this all the time. And I cannot predict how much energy that I can burn tomorrow because I don't know how much energy I'm getting in. So the more that we can create an environment where we can reduce that layer of stress by saying, hey, my body knows it's getting 1,800 calories, for example, every single day, it's going to start realizing that it can burn more calories every day because there's no stress coming from the inconsistency of the calories that there used to be. And again, this seems so simple, but it's probably one of the most powerful tools that we can utilize is giving yourself enough food, but then also just being consistent with it. Of course, there's layers and nuance to that. So if you have a poor relationship with food, this is going to be a lot harder. And so that's something that we need to also unpack and work on as well together, right? We typically see really, really big shifts in body composition in clients by making them eat more and making them eat more consistently. And this is mostly because they're more focused on consistency and are expending more energy through non-exercise activity and digesting foods now, and they have more energy and vitality for life on a consistent daily basis. And they're eating just more on a regular basis, so their body feels a lot more comfortable letting go of fat, and it's not as stressed because it knows what to expect. We may not think that it has an impact, but drastic differences in your caloric intake from day to day will definitely cause weight loss resistance. And not to mention, it will impact and damage your relationship that you have with food. Again, remember, our brain is mission control. So if we have a really poor relationship with food, if we're constantly guilting ourselves over things that we're eating, or we're binging and restricting, and we having this really vicious cycle, that mindset is a really important factor to this. So if you had 1 or 2 days of fun on the weekend, for example, and you've eaten a lot of calories, that's fine, but don't follow it up with 45 days of total restriction to try to make up for it. This is creating a system of distrust with your metabolism, and you're only putting yourself in a worse position than you would have if you didn't starve yourself for, 4 or 5 days afterwards, and you just got right back on track and told your body, hey, be comfortable. You're okay. Let go of this fat. You know what to expect tomorrow. We're all good. And then over time, you'll probably be a lot more consistent because your body feels more comfortable. You're not focusing on food anymore. You're always feeling content. You're never feeling hungry. So those hunger hormones are not out of control anymore. It all happens in a trickle-down effect and a chain reaction. But the biggest thing we can do to control that layer is by eating more and eating more consistently so that our body feels comfortable.
So we do have a metabolism boosting guide that if you message me on Facebook or Instagram or email me, I am more than happy to send that to you. It's a really brief outline of the things that we do with all of our clients. So if you want that, just let me know. It also points you to different podcast episodes and stuff like that. I know this was a lot of information. It can be a lot to digest. It can make you panic and be like, I messed up. I've been doing everything wrong for so long. That's okay. We help women with this every single day. I talk to women and help them figure this stuff out every single day. If you want a free consultation for us to go over where things are going wrong, why eat less, move more isn't working for you, just book a consultation call. The link is in the comments, or you can just email me directly. That might be the best way to send you a link as well. But we are always more than happy to help. Our Black Friday sale is still going on right now. So if you want information on that, we have a discount on coaching. We have MyFitnessPal premium in there as well. We have gift cards. We have you enter to win a Dutch test. There's a ton of perks. So if you're interested in that, again, just email us. Even if you book a consultation call, we will never push coaching on you. I promise. At the end of the call, we will always say, is there anything else that we can help you with? If you want to learn about coaching, that's your opportunity. If you don't, you say you're done, and that's it. We won't harass you. We just want you to start learning about your body and understanding what you need. Do not hesitate to book a call to help. We just want to help you guys. So that's it. That's all. Kirianna, thank you so much for being on honestly, every episode we do together is over an hour. I'm so sorry, you guys.
I know. We talk too much. Sorry, guys.
Okay, but have a great rest of your day, you guys. I hope you found that helpful. Again, book that consultation call if you want help. Message me if you want the metabolism boosting guide. Talk to you soon. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.